I'm not a fan of Brad Little. I think he's been another in a series of caretaker governors that we've had since Phil Batt, excellent governor, Cecil Andrus set the bar high, Kim Thorne, mediocre governor, Otter, mediocre governor, Little, mediocre governor, and then coronavirus hit, and he showed what an arrogant snit he is. He should have consulted with the legislature. We have three co-equal branches of government. I think Little overstepped his bounds, especially in not calling the legislature into session. The people have a voice, and I think this went to his head. And I don't know who he was listening to, but it wasn't the public. So without talking about the coronavirus incident and just talking about Brad Little, I mean, I came into the shoot not liking him right away. At an AIC conference a couple years ago, he was asked by former Mayor for Life David Beater of Boise about local control. Little starts talking about his wife and the small town she grew up in. And he eventually said no. And I asked a former legislator, I said, is Little retarded? No, he's not. He's an extremely clever guy, but he's a politician. At a campaign event in 2018 in Post Falls, I asked him what he would do about fully funding the schools, because right now the schools are burdening our property taxes, and the state has a responsibility. And I said, Governor, if you're elected governor, what are you going to do to fully fund the schools? And he said, what do you want me to unfund? Do you want me to cut funding to police, to parks, to the roads? What money do you want me to cut? So he took that question and threw it right back at me, which just to me he was a total jackass doing that. And it wasn't lost on the crowd there either. But what are you going to do? Especially when you have a guy. Here's his political CV, just briefly. I mean, he was president of IACI and IACA. You ought to look that, or IACI. You ought to look that up if you want to see what IACI is. And now he was appointed to the Senate by mediocre Kim Thorne in 2001. So he never initially ran for office. And then he was reelected because that's what we do in Idaho. Elected to governor lieutenant governor in 2009, governor in 2018. Here's the results from that election. Not impressive. And now they want to recall him because of the coronavirus thing and his acting like Pharaoh of Egypt. According to East Idaho News, the Jennifer Zenner, one of the organizers of the recall, he's behaving like a king does, making unilateral decisions, deciding for himself how he feels and how things should be handled. She's right. He did. A delegation of legislators went to meet with him. He wouldn't see him. Refused to see him. I mean, and that would tick me off so much, and you don't want to tick off the legislature, especially when they're united against you. So there's a recall. Understandable. I was totally in support of this. Here's the mechanics of how that works. So they have the initial petition in. Now they have to get signatures of 183,500 Idahoans in order to get the recall on the ballot. The deadline is August 11th for that. And if passed, and I think it will, if it's successful, then his name would be on the ballot for recall in November 3rd. They must get 361,661 votes in favor of recalling him, which is one more vote he got in favor of him when he ran in 2018. The bar is real high in Idaho for recalling elected officials. And elected officials made it difficult that way on purpose. That's why recalls like the one in Dalton Garden or in the Water District here in Kootenai County are exceptions. They normally recalls fail because the bar is just so high. And here's what made me turn against the recall is this last thing, that the lieutenant governor then becomes governor if a recall is successful. Here's the Idaho State Constitution, Article 4, Section 12. The lieutenant governor will act as governor in case the governor is removed from office, and the lieutenant governor then becomes governor and fills out the rest of the term. So who would that be? Why, it would be this lady. And by the way, that's pronounced Janice. Here's how Janice did in the 2018 GOP primary. Not a very impressive result. There were 5 qualified candidates in that race, and all the right-wing wackos voted for Janice because she said all the right things, and she was propped up that way. And she won. It was disappointing. And then, unfortunately, she was against a really good Democrat in the fall. I believe her name was Kristen. And Kristen was just so. If Kristen would have ran as a Republican, oh my God, she would have won hands down. You had this debate going on in the fall between her and Janice, And Janice kept doing this during the debate, which really disturbed me. She kept doing this IDART thing. Now, first of all, it was a rambling debate. She was rambling. She's shuffling her notes. She did a terrible job. And Kristen, of course, as a former military, was just solid, really solid. But Janice kept looking off to her left like she was a little puppy dog looking for approval from someone who I don't know was there. But she did this all the time. It was very annoying. And I couldn't figure out who is she kowtowing to here, which power broker was standing over there nodding approval. And then who can forget this lovely picture? Oppose the recall because you don't want batshit crazy sitting in the chair on the second floor. Little, however, will be subject to the wrath of a vengeful and frustrated legislature when they meet in January. I predict they will pass 2 constitutional amendments. Number 1 will limit the governor's power in case of emergency. The governor will still have power to do things, but after a given amount of time, the legislature will automatically be called into session to provide that check and the people's oversight from a run-amok, power-crazed ass. There will also be a second constitutional amendment which will allow the legislature to call itself into session. I think both of those will pass handily. As far as Little's concerned, I don't think he has anything to worry about. He's going to survive the recall. I also believe that he will be reelected in 2022. You're going to have another crowded field. You're going to have your right-wing wacko in the race. You're going to have a couple of other legitimate candidates. Little will win with a plurality, and of course he'll stomp the Democrat in 2022 because that's what happens in Idaho. Anyway, I'm Dan Gookin. These are my opinions. I would encourage you not to support the recall. We can be very angry with our governor. We can say that he abused his authority. That is our right to say so. But as far as getting rid of him this way, you don't want that. You don't. I'm Dan Gookin. Thanks for watching.